You know, for years, the mantra in IT was cloud first, cloud first, cloud first. But what happens when the cloud bill actually comes due and it's a lot bigger than you expected? Today, we're diving into a really fascinating report from the tech research firm Virtualization Options LLC, and it's all about a trend called cloud repatriation. But here's the twist. This isn't about retreating from the cloud, it's actually a super strategic evolution. Let's dig into what that really means.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the reality check that so many companies are getting from the cloud. Then, we'll nail down what repatriation actually is. After that, we'll explore the huge opportunity for modernization this creates, walk through a 5-step plan for how to do it, and wrap up with a business case that makes it all click. Okay, first up, the cloud's reality check. You know, the initial promise of the public cloud was incredible, right? All this flexibility, scalability, efficiency. But now that people have been using it for a while, a very different picture is starting to emerge.
And that leads to the big question, doesn't it? The cloud promised us simplicity, efficiency, the whole package. But for a lot of organizations, it actually delivered a whole new set of headaches, especially when it comes to cost. And it's that gap right there between the promise and the reality, that's where our story really begins.
And it all starts with the budget. The report from Virtualization Options LLC uncovered something pretty staggering. On average, organizations are blowing past their cloud budgets by 35%. That's a huge number, and it's all driven by hidden fees and scaling costs that just creep up on you.
So where is all that money going? Well, a massive chunk of it, we're talking nearly a third of all cloud spending, is just pure waste. It's going to resources that are either just sitting there doing nothing, or they're way over provisioned for the job. I mean, that is a jaw-dropping amount of inefficiency.
So what's the alternative look like? Well, the numbers can be absolutely dramatic. Get this, one file hosting service saves $75 million in just 2 years, all by moving their core infrastructure back on premises. That's not just a small tweak, that's a massive financial lever to pull. So all of this brings us to our next big topic. What exactly is cloud repatriation? And it's so important to understand this isn't about saying, oops, the cloud was a mistake. No way. This is all about getting smarter and more mature with your strategy. At its core, repatriation is a careful, strategic move. The best way to think about it is the right workload in the right place. It's about looking at your applications and moving certain ones back to an environment where you have much tighter control over cost, performance, and of course, security. And here's the critical part. This is not an all-or-nothing decision. Sure, some companies might do a full repatriation, but what's way more common are these partial or hybrid approaches. You might move a big, predictable, data-heavy workload back on-prem, but keep a spiky customer-facing app in the cloud. It is all about optimizing for what makes the most sense. Now, this brings us to what might be the single most important idea in this entire report. Repatriation is not about going back in time to your dusty old data center. Not at all. It's about grabbing this moment to completely modernize your infrastructure and avoid all those legacy traps from the past. And this right here is the key difference. See, the old legacy stuff we all ran away from was complicated, siloed, and a pain to manage. But modern on-prem infrastructure, it's a completely different animal. We're talking unified, software-defined, and API-driven. It delivers all the simplicity and automation that made the cloud so attractive in the first place. So what does this all add up to? Well, you basically get the best of both worlds. You get the agility and speed of the cloud, but with the rock-solid control and predictable costs of your own infrastructure. And that, right there, is what turns this from a simple cost-saving move into a real competitive advantage. Okay, so the why is pretty compelling, right? But what about the how? How do you actually pull this off? Well, this next section lays out a really clear 5-step framework to make this whole process manageable and, most importantly, successful. So the framework is super logical. It all starts with assess. You got to know what you have before you can even think about moving it. From there, you define what your new home will look like and select the right strategy. Is it partial, hybrid? Then, and this is key, you prioritize. Start small with low-risk apps to get a win and build some momentum. And finally, the work isn't over at migration. You have to continuously optimize to make sure you're getting all the benefits you plan for. All right, let's talk about the bottom line. Let's talk money. The business case. How do you actually justify an initiative like this? Well, it all comes down to quantifying the payoff in clear financial terms that everyone can understand. And this is where the financial story really comes together. Look, yes, there's an upfront investment in repatriation, no doubt, but just look at the long-term trend. While those cloud costs just keep climbing and climbing, the modernized on-prem costs flatten out at a much lower, more predictable level. The report finds that the break-even point often hits in just 18 to 24 months. After that, you are just banking serious savings.
You know, when you boil it all down, it comes back to this one core idea. This quote from the Virtualization Options LLC report just says it all. Cloud repatriation reflects maturity in infrastructure strategy, not failure of cloud adoption. This isn't about ditching the cloud. It's about evolving your thinking to create a sophisticated hybrid strategy that gives you the maximum possible value.
So, we'll leave you with this one final thought to chew on. As you look at your own organization, ask yourself this. Is your infrastructure just another cost center, another line item on a budget spreadsheet? Or is it a strategic asset that's actually giving you a competitive edge? Because a smart repatriation and modernization plan could be the key to turning that cost center into a true game-changing advantage.